Hey guys, welcome to Timeless Car Tales. Today, we're going to be discussing the Chrysler Airflow, a car that was manufactured between the years of 1934 and 1937. While most cars on the road in the 1930s were boxy and traditional, the Airflow burst onto the scene with its sleek, smooth body that looked like nothing else of its time. It wasn't just a looker though. This car was an engineering powerhouse. Its flowing lines and curves weren't just for show. They required cutting-edge design techniques and tooling that were way ahead of their time. This resulted in a car that had a near 50-50 weight balance, evened out to 50-50 evenly with passengers. This meant that the car had much better handling than other cars on the road at the time. However, despite its groundbreaking design and engineering prowess, this car had its share of drama. In fact, the Airflow turned out to be plagued with design flaws and mechanical issues that ultimately led to the terrible sales figures. What went wrong with this innovative car? Let's get into the nitty-gritty and uncover the story behind its challenges. The Airflow was designed by a team of engineers known as the Three Musketeers, who were accompanied by Orville Wright, one of the Wright brothers that pioneered aviation in the early 1900s. The Three Musketeers originated from another automobile company called Studebaker, where they made a name for themselves to be handpicked by Walter Chrysler, the founder of the Chrysler Corporation. These legendary names were brought together by Chrysler in 1930 to study the most efficient shapes created by nature that could suit an automobile. To do this, Chrysler built a wind tunnel at one of their sites in Highland Park, Michigan, where the engineers could test full-scale models most efficiently. By April of 1930, the engineers had tested over 50 different models. What they found was that most of the boxy car designs that were being produced by other manufacturers were so aerodynamically inefficient that it was actually more aerodynamic to drive them backwards. With that in mind, the engineers had conceived a design that they were happy with and began to work on the construction of the car. One of the top goals of the Airflow was to be a car that's structurally rigid and weighed less than other cars of the time. To do that, the engineers looked into a unibody chassis design, which is something that became very popular with cars in the later 1900s. This resulted in a breakthrough of lightweight and durable construction in automobiles. In fact, Chrysler made a publicity stunt to show exactly how strong the Airflow's construction was by pushing it off a cliff and revealing that there was very little damage to the car when it rolled down the hill.
Here it comes on its death drop, leaping clear of the ledge and landing with crushing impact in the rocky shale beneath. Let's go survey the damage. You naturally expect to find only a heap of wreckage, but, well, judge for yourself. Despite the terrific shock to the body and chassis, the doors open and close easily. There is no structural damage. Indeed, the entire car has survived the plunge with little more than merely superficial injury.
The engine in the Airflow was a 5-litre inline 8-cylinder that produced about 130 horsepower. This was an engine that was used in other Chrysler, Plymouth and Dodge models at the time. It was placed forward over the front wheels, and the passengers were moved to be seated within the wheelbase rather than on top of the rear axle in other models at the time, which resulted in some pretty dangerous handling dynamics when it was slippery. The weight balance of the car with no passengers in it was about 54% to the front, and an even 50-50 with passengers in the car. This meant the Airflow had much better handling and ride quality compared to other traditionally engineered cars, which had a very uneven weight distribution of about 75% in the rear. The Chrysler Airflow was introduced to the world in January of 1934. It's important to note that the Airflow name wasn't exclusive to Chrysler. DeSoto, a subdivision of Chrysler, was scheduled to only produce Airflows, and it was introduced as the DeSoto Airflow alongside Chrysler. They costed $1,345, which is about $30,000 in today's money. Production wouldn't begin until May of 1934, where about 6,212 units were produced. This number was significantly lower than Chrysler had anticipated. It was barely enough to give even one Airflow to every Chrysler dealer in the country. It turns out Chrysler hadn't anticipated all of the manufacturing challenges that came with the Airflow's unique design. It required them to implement completely new welding techniques for almost all the panels and other components on the car. As a result, many of the Airflows that made it into dealerships suffered a lot of major mechanical defects. The most notable issue was with the engine mounts. Somehow, somewhere, the engine mounts in the Chrysler Airflow were either not designed or manufactured properly. The first 3,000 cars that left the factories had these faulty engine mounts, and it resulted in hundreds of cases of people's engines literally falling off of the car at speeds above 80 miles per hour. The Airflow saw poor sales figures compared to their other models, totaling 10,839 units in 1934, down to less than 8,000 in 1935, and continued to fall until it ended in 1937. All the work that went into the design of the car was lost. It was believed that the main reason sales were poor was because of the way the car looked. Consumers interpreted the merged front-end design as an anonymous lump. It also didn't help that rumors were spreading about the car being potentially unsafe. In 1935, Chrysler redesigned the front end to fit more in line with what the public wanted. This didn't have the impact that they hoped it would have, as it sold less than it did in 1934. Further redesigns took place throughout the years, but it was already too late. The public simply had too little interest in the Airflow. Less than 4,500 units were produced by 1937 before the car was inevitably cancelled. Despite the Airflow's failure, it was secretly the design influence of many other cars of the age. It's rumoured that the Volkswagen Beetle took influence from the Airflow when Ferdinand Porsche imported one to study in Germany. It was also the inspiration of Toyota's first ever prototype passenger car called the Toyota A1. This car would later be redesigned and put into production as the Toyota AA. Almost a century later, Chrysler announced the PT Cruiser, which took many design inspirations from the early Airflow. Though that car was also notoriously mocked for being ugly. Regardless of whether you think the Airflow was a failure or not, it's still a prized possession in many car collections around the world. Thanks for watching Timeless Car Tales. If you liked the video, check out some of my other videos on the channel. Otherwise, have a wonderful day.